John Connery, you knucklehead.
No, not you.
Gentlemen,
Nobody
one at a
will
time.
look at
One at a time, gentlemen.
This one right here.
Yeah, but the monkey threw poop on the dude's face. Like,
All right, so welcome back to Lightboy Presents. Today we will be discussing the movie Logan's Run, which came out in 1976, in which, in a dystopian future, basically all of humanity lives in a single city, which is domed and controlled. And once you reach the age of 30, you are sent to your death, hopefully to be reborn. Would anybody like to start?
I don't know if all of humanity lives in that dome. I don't. I think there may be other domes. And of course, when you go towards the end of the movie, you find out there is other life. So I just have to disagree on that point.
Great. Just, gave away the ending. Spoiler alert.
Already? We just started.
2 minutes in.
You can't just bullshit things like that.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Hey, you know what? The glass cars were super cool, bro. Those are still futuristic 44 years later.
Totally.
Let's just start with something positive, okay?
I love that they get the one tube, Logan and the girl, they jump in, they go, and then they get chased by a couple other Sandmen as if they can be lost. I mean, they're like, same tube, car ahead. You're not going to lose them, dude. There's nowhere they can go.
Well, not only that, they were also chased by a couple of Jessica's friends, the friends that were wanted to kill.
It might have been those guys. It might have been the rebels. Whatever.
Not to mention that the computer controls everything, so how could it just not shut down the tube?
Right.
And they can't go anywhere. But, I digress.
Well, now we're getting into plot holes.
I love this movie, though, because I really like old school effects as opposed to CGI. I love the diorama. It's beautiful, and the map paintings. It's that really works.
It's like looking at a train set, bro.
The models that they use, because I'm pretty sure every time that you see a far shot of the tubes and the cars going through, I'm pretty sure that's all miniature model work.
Sure.
And then the thing that was cracking me up, but also, played to their advantage, was the horrible shots of the Sandmen bursting into flame on the walls or anything like that. Whereas when they hit someone, there's no flame, people just die. But I really appreciated the use of sparks and squibs and flame pots to show that where the shots hit when they didn't hit a target.
The Sandmen are the worst. Like they're stormtrooper level.
Exactly.
Yes.
The stormtrooper marksmanship school. It was horrendous. But I love how they project their we'll call them lasers for lack of a better word. But it's like they push their gun forward when they shoot. And as if they're throwing the bullet out of the gun. Going back to that opening, but you mentioned opening shot and the diorama and stuff like that. It's a great opening shot. It really is.
Mm-hmm.
As you kind of get closer, though, I don't know. It is a nice diorama. It just the moss kind of pulled me away. That it's like it just kind of looked like it was very train setting to me. And the opening music is just haunting, and it really
particularly when they're coming in on the bubbles of the diorama, which is a completely different diorama. Those look really beautiful.
Yeah, the thing is, I saw this. I wanted to revisit this. This is kind of one of the reasons I chose it. I saw this on TV I don't know, maybe 80, 81. It was probably on ABC back in the day when they had the movie of the week or something like that. And I remember being freaked out. It was eerie to me. It was a very haunting, spooky movie. And especially, just the announcement to Carousel, Carousel Capricorn 15, and it just kind of haunting and ominous and,
Okay. I'm going to piggyback on that for a minute because this was something that I made a note of. Cap 15. So assuming Capricorn equates to what we know right now,
Sure.
that would be sometime around January 15th, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah, we can go with that.
And then when they get out of the domes, they're in DC, and it looks like spring to summer, correct?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it's warm.
Yeah. When they get back in and Carousel's being called again, it's Cap 29. So basically this movie takes place over 2 weeks, but DC has no snow. And the outside is spring-like.
It's climate change, Mike. Come on. Obviously.
Well, that's an interesting thing. It's a possibility because here's the thing. Supposedly they did make some adjustments to the film based from the book to coincide or to reference or not reference, but and not adjust. There's a word for it. I'm sorry. I'm drawing a freaking blank. Can't think of words nowadays. I'm getting old. Maybe I should go join Carousel.
Just 20 years too late, buddy.
Exactly. So they to reference, certain things that were going on at the time, and I'm sure climate change back then, or it might have been acid rain for all we know back in the 70s.
Sure.
Dealing with, but they wanted to touch base on that. Now, at the same time, though, Mike, even though this would still be in the same time period, for the most part, you could be going on their birth as well. But granted, 30 years later, I'm assuming they do it. It doesn't have to necessarily be when they, on the 30th of their birth. I mean, it could be that year, so they could do it in the spring. And the Capricorns could be that was when they were born.
Mm-hmm.
The group. I don't know. I'm just trying to kind of play devil's advocate.
Yeah, no, and it could have absolutely taken place over the course of a year.
Yeah.
Well, no, I don't think so because when he starts his run, I think it's a matter of days. I think it's like not even a day before they actually get outside. They have to fight Box, and then they get outside, and they have one night where she's like, I'm cold, ooh. And then they go swimming, and then they go to DC. They go through the wading pool, and they find the old man. So I'm not sure it's actually that long that they're out before they come back in.
Yeah, I have to agree with Brian because his sideburns didn't grow at all.
And he didn't need a shave.
That.
No, I would agree with that.
Michael York's hair is perfect throughout the movie.
Right? All the way down.
He looks a little bit crazed after they go back through the water, and I think they do that purposefully, but otherwise his hair is immaculate.
I would agree with that, yeah. It's Michael York, you have to. The funny thing is there was one moment when they're going through the hallways and stuff, and there's water dripping. She's drenched.
Right.
Yeah.
And he's dry.
Right.
I know. Yeah, and his hair is perfect. And hers is a little funked up.
We're getting.
I believe her hair is shorter than his.
It's a tough call.
They had Merkins back then.
I have no idea what that is.
Oh yeah.
It's a pubic wig.
Oh, all right. There you go, Mike.
Thanks,
Brian just gets quiet.
I have heard the term, but I couldn't recollect it. So thank you, Mike. I'm glad that's on the top of your head, and yours too, James.
Yeah, funny thing about working in technical theater.
Working the Merkin.
We jumped ahead a little bit, but there was an interesting thing. There was an interesting thing that Francis says to Logan early on. So they're at the nursery or whatever you want, incubation chamber or whatever you want to call it for the babies.
Yeah.
Logan's starting to question certain things, and but Francis looks at him he's like something to the extent of let's go or let's leave or whatever. He's not yours anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just going with the fact that maybe it's insemination. Like he is a father. They do breed them, but
Yeah,
they never know who, they don't know who the mother's going to be. And
that's
they
right.
reference
They
it
Right.
take
later.
the seed
Right.
mother.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So that takes, well, I mean, I don't know. I guess it doesn't take much of the entertainment out of it because it's without the responsibility of, finding out you're a parent later on down the
Parenting.
road. Sam?
Sure.
I think one of my favorite parts in the movie is like, when he gets home and he's chilling in his toga, and he's like, you know what? I feel like getting laid. He turns, and the guy shows up, and the guy's like, hey, he's like, nah. I was dying, bro, when I saw that, and then the girl shows
Sure.
up, and that's when I text James. I'm like, I see why you get this movie now.
Oh. So that's what the reference was.
I was laughing my ass off, dude, when I saw that. I'm like, imagine that. I'm like, wait, that takes, before they even knew about the internet and speed dating and dating apps. They just went right to the point, man.
Yeah, swipe left, swipe right. He swiped right or swiped left, and they went right after.
Oh, that was funny, bro.
Carousel spooked me, man. I don't know. That's still kind of, it's effective. It's effective with the robes and the hand, the
hockey masks.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And as soon as
I have to compliment the film because you can't see any of the guide wires.
no,
right?
Yes, you absolutely can.
Oh, really? I couldn't.
I totally thought you were being sarcastic, Brian.
No, I couldn't see the guide
Oh
wires.
yeah, they're there. They're there.
Yeah.
Depending on which shot they use, but there's a good point where there's like, oh yeah, you can totally see them.
You can totally see the wires. And Carousel brings up an interesting point, again, from a backstage or a rigging perspective, in that the lower quadrant where all the performers are is spinning, which means there has to be a subsequent out of frame infrastructure that's spinning at that same rate so that they're not tangling wires.
Oh, that's good.
So I was very impressed, which, it's simple technology. But I was still very impressed that in the 70s they were able to adequately pull that off without having any major catastrophes that we know of.
I linked Carousel to the giant bug lamp of the future.
So
I can absolutely see that.
Yeah.
I have kind of a deep question I was thinking about before the talk today. So if you're in that dystopian society and you're brought up to believe this is your reality, you have to die at 30 and you're going to regenerate, be reborn, do you go along with it or do you run?
Well, obviously, a lot of people ran because they have runners.
Well, not only do they have runners, they have 1,056 unaccounted for runners.
Right. But then again, that there's Sandmen that will kill you if you run, and then you're not going to get reborn, right? Assuming you get shot by a Sandman. So what do you do? Do you just go along with it, or do you run?
Are you asking us specifically? Or are we just...
Yeah, I'm asking you as people. Yeah.
Oh, I probably, I don't know. I'd like to think I'd run, but
I don't know. I get pretty hooked on that little thing that you can just call up whoever you want, bro. I don't know what the age of consent is when you could start using that, but hell, if I got a good 20 years out of it, I'll be ready to go at 30.
You won't get that many. So from my breakdown, and this was actually really interesting because first watch through, I watched through it twice. I noticed, very monochromatic, not only scenery, but also costumes, in that we had prevalency of yellow, green, red.
Right.
And in fact, the lady, I'm blanking on her name at the moment, he asks how old she is when, she beams into his room. She says that she's 6 and she'll be turning red at her next birthday.
How old are you?
I'm a 6.
And then in my watch through today, when they went to the Cubs, they said at 16, so yellow 16, they become greens, basically.
How old are you? 40? 50? Our time is running out here. How long have you got left here? A year? 6 months? What happens when you're 16 and you go to green?
Nothing will happen.
And so my initial thought was, okay, yellow was 0 to 10, green 10 to 20, and then red 21 to 30.
Sure.
And that doesn't work. And so if we take yellow as 16, and then greens for 6 years, and then reds for 6 years, that doesn't work. And then I realized, watching through in the final decompression of Michael York's character of Logan, when he's in the cage and he's got the other folks around, he shoots the wall, and there's actually 4 different colors.
He shoots the red one.
He does shoot the red one, but before yellow, there's a clear one. So what I was able to...
when the babies are born in the opening scene, they're clear. Yeah.
So what I've been able to figure is that you're clear from 0 to 2 years, you're yellow from 2 years to 18, green from 19 to 24, and then red from 25 to 30. And that's the only way that I can get the actual numbers to work.
So why
would she say she's 6?
And why did you say 18?
Because if you're clear from 0 to 2, then you're clear 1, clear 2, and then you're yellow 1, 2, 3, 4 up to 16, and then you're green 1 through 6, and then red 1 through 6.
Oh, so they account for their age completely differently.
Sure. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, it goes by the color, right? And then the years.
Right.
Interesting.
Right. That's how I was able to figure it.
Right, but why would you go 18 and not 16?
Because that's when the Cubs said they would turn green.
Cubs said 16, not 18. But
16, right? But since he was clear 1 and 2,
right?
So that might just be a misspeak on my part, because we're talking in human age as well as this fanciful age.
Well, the other thing is like it seems like the Cubs, they make their own rules anyways.
That's true.
Not all Cubs. These are the delinquent Cubs, because there are yellows.
That's what I'm talking about. I don't think that they reference Cubs in the area that's outside. I'm talking about, it seems like Cathedral has its own rules. Right.
It has a delinquent class, for lack of a better term.
Well, it's a Lord of the Flies thing. There is no other class. I mean, it's all, they're all youth. There's nobody that's allowed.
Yeah, but their leader pooped his pants when Logan pulled out the gun. It's like,
he did, yeah.
Boom.
That's what I mean. They have their own rules in that. The other thing is as well, it's like, now where do they go? Because that's never really accounted for. It's not like they get to go back into arcade. Or
I presume they actually do. I presume they do go back into arcade.
Yeah, I think that's how the dialogue struck me, is that once they turn yellow 16,
they get taken in.
Put back into general pop, and either the Sandman get them or they learn to behave.
Well, here's the other thing as well is I don't think that's necessarily the case, because I think this is also, if I'm not mistaken, these are breeders. These are natural birth children.
Where do you get that from? I never got that sense. Yeah. I've seen the movie a bunch of times. I never got that.
Yeah, it's referenced very briefly, but it seems like these are the breeder. These are the breeder.
So you're saying they're born outside of the dome and then they come back?
No,
he's saying they're born naturally rather than with a seed mother and that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So,
I never got that sense though.
There's a reference to breeders when they're going to Cathedral.
Okay.
And that's an interesting thing as well, because you also have Cathedral being church base, whereas like everything that is in the main city is outside the realm of true religion, if you will.
No, but that goes back to my question earlier about, if you're indoctrinated that way, I mean, doing carousel kind of, it's like a sacrament. It's like, It's like church in that respect.
Right, but it's not based. Well, I guess it's still based on faith in a way, but I mean, it's not.
It is. That's why I was asking
Right.
the question. Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I can't answer that. I can't give you a truthful answer to that. I mean, I think that's the kind of the same thing as like God, this is going to go in a political aspect, but it's the same thing as like when you're in certain classrooms and they're like, would you be an abolitionist or would you be a slave owner? Oh, and everybody's an abolitionist, but unless you were there at the time, you're not going to really know how you'd behave.
Right.
You know, would you follow the SS or would you?
Well, even Logan though, up until the point that his palm went clear, he was executing the mission.
Exactly.
He was a believer. He was going to lie, cheat, and steal to do what he was supposed to do. And that's the big dichotomy between he and Francis, because Francis, even when he realizes that he's gone clear, still has to go through with the mission.
I'm going to push back a little bit on that. I don't think him going clear is what makes him go ahead and go against the mission. I think it happens a little bit after that. I think it's once he shoots that first Sandman. Once they do the breach, when the Sandmen do the breach, and he shoots one, I think that's where his.
That's way later. That's after they come back into the city.
No, it's not.
No. Okay. So
when does this happen?
It's right after. It's right after they give him the steam bath, if you will. They got the steam sticks that they shoot steam in their face.
Right.
And he's like, "Run, Sandman, go!" It's obviously some.
I don't think that's when he turns.
Yeah.
All right, gentlemen.
Why do you think that's when he turns?
Stop.
Why would
both
he
of you
shoot his Sandman?
now.
Stop. Why would he shoot a partner?
Okay. When he turns is when he takes his vest off, and he takes his vest off when he strips down in the cave and never puts it back on again.
I actually think that's closer. I think it's closer that when he kills Box, which is apparently one of the biggest parts of the movie, even though it's this quick. I think that's closer, but I still go with when he realizes that he's clear, then he's like, what am I doing?
I think that's his confirmation, but I think
Yeah.
he makes that decision.
Okay.
I think he makes that decision once he shoots that first salmon. I think that's when he's like, "There's no turning back at that point."
Yeah, I think you're both right, but I think it starts with the crystal where it turns white, but I don't think that's the catalyst that pushes him over the edge.
The crystal doesn't turn white until he's out of the dome.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I have to go with James on this one. I think that when he does pull the trigger,
he's still in the dome when he pulls the trigger on the Sandman.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
still
think that's
within
when
the
he goes.
Interesting.
There's also
I think it's closer to when he gets to fighting Box. If you're not going to go with when it goes clear, then when he finds that Box is freezing everybody,
he's already made a decision. But when he's gotten a Box, that's why it doesn't really make a difference to him.
All right.
And Box does. I mean, Box is. I don't know. I mean, I still don't necessarily. The only thing I can account for Box is he's like the answer to where the 1056 that got away went.
Definitely. I don't think that's right. I think it's the people from Carousel that are getting frozen.
No,
I think they're the ones that are getting zapped in there because he was talking about
were runners, and they got frozen, and that's where they went. No one ever got to Sanctuary, and and the reason I think that is no Sandman ever ran before, so Box never had anyone that he could actually fight. And so when he got someone that actually had a gun and was a Sandman, then he was able to destroy him. I don't know why you would think it's people from Carousel, because those people die as soon as they touch the thing. I don't know how it would be.
They don't actually touch the thing, and we just see
I don't know how it would be
sparks.
efficient to then freeze their bodies. That doesn't make any sense.
I think it's them exploding. I think they die. I think they die that fiery death, and there's nothing left.
Sure.
You know,
I will say
that.
though that it's a parallel to Soylent Green, since they're freezing the bodies, and then he's like, "I'm making food."
Exactly, yeah, because I think I think there's a reference that there is no more plankton, there is no
Right.
more fish.
Yeah.
there's no
Yeah,
more
he definitely says that.
proteins from the sea, and now we're
And I want to give a shout out to that actor. I can't remember his name, but his voice is so distinctive, and I really like that guy. He was in the Cowboys with John Wayne.
How did they get there?
Regular storage procedure. The same as the other food. The other food stopped coming, and they started.
What other food?
Fish, and plankton, and sea greens, and protein from the sea. It's all here.
nice.
I believe.
I don't remember his name either. I'd have to look it up.
So, do you guys think there's any significance to the uniforms of the nurses or the doctors, just because they're outside of the yellow, green, and red, just like the Sandman are, and they seem to be the only vocation that we see outside of the Sandman that are not specifically yellow, green, red?
I don't recall. I just recall Farrah Fawcett, and that was she had too small of a role.
Yeah, and Paul Rudd. The doctor kind of looks like Paul Rudd.
He does.
Yeah.
So,
No, they just got some sparkly costumes, as James would say.
That was an interesting fight scene, though, and they did an effect which I'm not going to describe correctly, but they did the same thing during the fight scene with Box, where they superimpose an image on top of the actual film, and it looks crappy, but that's another convention of older films that I kind of like. It's done well.
Yeah, no, they did that a lot, especially with the collapsing and things of that sort with Box, as they escape out of Box's lair, for lack of a better term. That's 90%, I think, of all the falling stuff is layering.
Exactly.
Lightboy! Lightboy! Lightboy!
One of the misfits. I don't know what that meant. Sorry, it was a note.
Were you watching Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer?
No. It was before. It's a note before the ecstasy power bomb that he throws up at the ceiling.
Oh, see, now that's the type of scene you just don't get in modern movies. The orgy scene. Yeah.
No, not that orgy scene. I'm talking about the one in his apartment.
In his apartment, where
and they throw the ecstasy bomb.
Logan takes the girls down, and his friend is like, "Hey, give me back my screamer one." And then the next day makes another reference, and I don't remember specifically what it is, but it was another thing that was just like, yeah, this is a PG movie from the 70s.
That would have been so much easier, Brian, in college. Boom! It's a party, baby.
I love how they've got these little areas inside arcade where it's like, this is the orgy club. Go over there and have fun. You just don't get that, and it's actually common in a lot of 70s films.
Oh yeah,
no, I know. Half the time I was watching this, I thought it was going to turn into a porno.
Exactly.
Everything. I was like, is this going to just break down into some weird 70s sex? But I think that goes with the whole thing from the beginning, where it looks Romanesque. You know what I mean? Everybody's walking around in togas.
Oh, absolutely.
And I was like, okay, so I get that vibe from the very beginning that it was already steering, like, kind of that way anyway.
There's another film from this era that I mentioned to Mike earlier today called Zardoz with Sean Connery, and he's wearing like a thong, and it's the same exact idea where they're in a dome and everybody is just like having sex, and that's the only place you can be. It's a prevalent theme during that era.
Well, it sounds like one studio competing against another one, and they got one. No, that's how it goes nowadays too. Look what happened with Tombstone. And then they came out with Wyatt Earp.
Yeah,
right. Absolutely.
It's the same thing. They're just trying to compete each other on different levels. So that might have been them too.
So one thing that I just want to point out, it feels to me that from this film to what we see in modern films, the acting is completely changed. in that this film feels like a bunch of theatrical actors
Agreed.
who are being filmed.
Yeah.
Whereas with what we see anymore, especially with modern actors of today, they're far more subtle and far more, I don't want to say realistic, but for lack of a better term, I'll say realistic in their stylizing. They're not overemphasizing the way that theater performers have to, just due to the size of the house that they play, versus the television audience, where you can do as much with a wink as you can, or I should say a wink on film, as you can with a gesture on stage.
Well, what do you attribute that to, Mike? I think that's a great point.
I think it has more to do with specifically people becoming film actors as opposed to film and theater actors, as well as just directors better understanding the film medium. Because even though, it's been around about 20 years, 100 years at this point, it wasn't, I think, until we got such films like Star Wars and Jaws and things like that, where directors really started to understand the nuances and the differences between directing for film as opposed to theater.
Do you think there's any impact in that regard if you're an actor with a matte painting as a background versus CGI?
Can you rephrase the question?
Well, I used to act, and I'm wondering, and maybe James can jump in on this. I'm wondering if what you're saying, theater acting versus film acting, if in the mind of the actor, in this case, Michael York and, the others.
Jenny Gutter and whatnot.
Yeah. If you have a matte painting behind you and you're acting within the parameter of that because it's right behind you versus CGI, if that changes the approach.
Sure. Well, what I can say from listening to actors who've dealt with a fair amount of CGI on set, be it Jurassic Park, be it the prequels for Star Wars, they definitely expressed difficulty in visualizing what was there. But I don't know as simply acting against a green screen versus acting against a backdrop would necessarily change a master of their craft. That's me, but again, I'm the technician of the group. You guys were all on stage, and outside of my music career, I kept it backstage. So you guys would probably be the ones to better answer that.
I think it might. I'm curious to know what James thinks.
Well, I think it just depends. I mean, is it any different from doing a radio play or even doing a voiceover thing as if you were in a video game or something to that extent? I mean, you're certainly not, in that regard. I don't know. I mean, I have yet to do a green screen thing or even the suit, the motion capture suit or anything like that. So, I mean, if you take something like that, I mean, things are changing. I mean, so I don't even know if we can use that they're doing the green screen thing nowadays. If you look at the Mandalorian, they're doing that whole projection of the entire
LED wall,
onto these walls. So we've evolved into that. So
interesting.
I everything's evolving. So I don't know if we can really make that comparison now because we're not dealing with green screen acting like we did with the prequels for Star Wars.
That's fair.
And everything was practical in Logan's Run. There's nothing, it just, the effects were terrible,
Terrible because we're looking at it 44 years later.
Yeah, I agree with Sam.
Sure, but I mean, you can go back to Jason and the Argonauts and you look at the stop motion that they were doing with live action and even the effects in that, which was probably, I think, in the 50s maybe.
But I thought it was 60s.
It could be, but even still, I mean, the effects in that were so much better than...
No, the destruction of the diorama at the end when it's burning, I thought that went well.
Okay.
And I thought pretty much all of the diorama stuff went well.
I would agree with that, but the one note that I have is like oh God, where is it? It's the collapse of the ice cave. It's
Oh yeah, no, it's
terrible.
horrible. No, it's absolutely horrible when they kill box, everything comes
Yeah,
down.
it's just
No,
like
it
it's so
sucks.
different layers of different film, and
Yeah.
overlaps, and just it's
But
terrible.
again, we're looking at it with the luxury of having 20 years, over 20 years of some amazing special effects.
Yeah, but even so, I mean, I've seen plenty of movies from this era. That scene sucks.
Yeah.
And I'm curious. I don't know if anybody looked it up. I didn't. When they're walking along the beach with the old man. They're coming back to whatever it's called where they live. That looks a hell of a lot like the beach from Planet of the Apes. Did anybody check whether that's the same location?
I don't know about trivia wise. I do know that this was shot in Texas, Dallas.
Oh, nice.
So,
I didn't look up any kind of filming location.
Yeah. It's possible that could have been an homage, but I don't know. I will say, and I'm not one for remakes by any means, but I can't say that this film holds up. Like, it was nice to revisit, and I've wanted to for a long time. Like, I need to rewatch that again. I need to rewatch that. And I rewatched it. I'm like, it's not. Look, it's not Flash Gordon. It's not that terrible. And I love Flash
Gordon.
It's actually, I think Flash Gordon is worse.
It is. That's what I'm saying. It's not.
Yeah, it's nostalgic. I've owned it. I've watched it probably more than 10 times. I have the comic book. Apparently, there was a television. There was apparently a television series, James.
There was, and they made some reference in one of the YouTube, films on this. Where they reference it, and I guess they totally rewrote what kind of happens in the movie. It's kind of like certain things didn't happen. I guess the way that they exactly how they phrased it. That being said, I will say that this is a movie that could benefit from a remake.
You're right.
I think they could do something.
The script.
Well, I have to tell you, I had talked to Mike about this earlier today. There's a movie on Netflix right now called What Happened to Monday, and it's got Willem Dafoe in it, and it's very, very similar. It's the same type of dystopian, timeline, and you can't have kids because the world's overpopulated. And because I watched Logan's Run before I saw that film, so I was getting ready for the chat, and I was like, oh man, these are really similar. So I'd say could do with the remake, but there are other more modern films that do the job. Look at that kid.
You're doing the floss, dude.
Yeah, that's Eugene, and he can't hear you guys. Just so you're aware.
Eugene, there's a nice cutaway moment, Mike, for your for extra.
Yeah, I was talking about a bullshit movie anyway. So
yeah, no.
Sam,
so
we haven't heard. Oh, sorry, Mike. Go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna say there were a couple scenic things that kind of struck me. One was what they the scenic designer, for the most part, the sets were monochromatic, to the point that
is that kid wearing clothes?
He's got pants on, to the point that they were kind of boring comparative to what we normally see in sets. There wasn't a lot of ornamentation on the walls or anything like that. But I did think for Cathedral, they did really well for the use of entrances for all the juvenile delinquents.
I'm sorry.
No, you're good. But they gave them poles to slide down, a slide to come down, things to appear from behind, and so from a designer standpoint, they were giving their director options, and I thought that was really good. And then at the same time, when they're on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial, I thought the set dressing was horrible. It was just a bunch of vines that looked like they just kind of got thrown there, and there was no thought given to actually how a vine would grow up and over these. And that really frustrated me as a designer.
It was similar when they went through the wading pool at the Washington Monument.
Yeah.
Kept waiting for Forrest to show up.
Just to be honest with you guys, one thing that I was thinking about, and Mike already touched on it, from the very beginning, I thought I was watching a theater production that was filmed.
Huh.
No, with the acting, and especially when I got the carousel and the wires and everything, I was just like, to me, this could be a stage production.
Yeah.
No problem with that. And the way it was acted and shot, I mean, that's why I think some of the scenes suck ass so bad. And not just because it was 44 years ago. I just think that they didn't really do a good job. And then other times they were like spot on. I'm like, you know what? That's still cool today.
Yeah.
Like, I still think those glass cars where it's all glass and everything, I'm like, that's kick ass, dude. Even
Totally.
44 years later.
Yeah.
Totally.
So I have two questions for you, Sam. One, does it meet your 3?
No.
Really?
Which one doesn't it meet?
Got guns, titties. It's still recording.
No, that's
true.
why it's perfect. It's got guns, it's got tits. It's got ass. What's it missing, Sam?
I think you could tell what's going on if you turn down the volume.
Are you talking to me?
Yeah.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't meet my 3 because visually it's okay. I mean, I still don't. The soundtrack and the dialogue isn't that great, bro. To be honest with you, if you turned off everything and you listened to it, it wouldn't be a radio show, dude.
No, I totally agree with that.
No,
Yeah.
I do.
And trust me, I'm not going out and buying the Logan's Run soundtrack on Columbia Records.
Because you already have it.
I have it on vinyl.
I don't.
He has it.
I wouldn't buy it because I already own it.
Good call, dude.
I wish I did. I was gonna say CD, but I'm like, no, it'd have to be vinyl. But
So it doesn't meet your 3 because it doesn't have the audio. It has the visual, but the visual sucks. But
yeah, it's hit or miss. Like Mike said, like the ice crashing scene is just completely stupid, dude.
Horrible.
Yeah, but like you see the carousel stuff, and that's theatrical, and I get it, and it's cool, and there's other parts in the movie that, but it's like, flop. You're like, whoa, what happened? And then like some cool, and then it flops. You're like, okay.
Right.
There's no consistency that like, like it builds or it just maintains. So no, it doesn't.
So my second question is, what is your favorite part?
When that dude pops in, he's like, hey, he's like, yeah. I was fucking dying, bro. I rewound that. I was like this because I rented it, right? I was like, I'm not paying because first I looked it up and it was like, oh, it's on Netflix. I'm like, oh, sweet.
I gave you the free link.
That shit doesn't work, bro. That's some fucking Chinese.
No, it totally works.
Crap. Fucking no,
Totally
it
works.
it kept telling me
Maybe
virus warning.
All right.
But anyway, it said it was on Netflix on Google. So I got on Netflix and it's like, no, Logan's Run related. And I'm like, nah, fuck this. And then I went to iTunes. It's like $12.99. I'm like, no, fuck no. I'm not paying $12.99 for this movie. So
Totally
I rented it.
Speed Racer was, but not Logan's Run.
Yeah, that at least has background. So no, yeah, I thought that part was hilarious to me, dude. I thought that was fucking funny.
This is not a movie that you would have on in the background of the rave. Is what
Hell no.
I actually would because it's a throwback. Like it's super retro. Yeah, I would. I think Speed Racer would definitely give better visuals in the background of a rave, but Logan's Run would be legit.
I'm not going to Brian's rave.
I'm going to go back.
I'll comp you, bro.
I'm going to go back to Mike's comment about when you were going back to the age thing, Mike. What's up, Eugene? Now in the book, the age was actually 21.
So
I thought it was 24, but okay.
Oh, 21. So that could actually, you know, I mean, obviously, no, I mean, I take that back because they would still have to adjust it to go by the movie rather than, you know.
James, did you read the book?
I don't read.
I know that,
He
but
says with the bookcase behind him.
yeah.
I know, right?
Did you read the book?
With his pipe and his turtleneck.
This is a green screen CGI.
I thought it might be a Philip
My
K.
hand
Dick
goes
book,
right
but it's
through it.
much earlier. So, did you read it or not?
No.
Okay, so guys, a couple things. So we've got Logan 5 as the main character, correct?
You're clear, Mike 1.
All right. So assuming he's
I'm
the
Brian 13, by the way. Just
fifth
put that out.
iteration, we're looking at approximately about 150 years that they've been set into, or at least I should say 140 years and possibly even longer with them in the dome, separated from the outside world.
Let's go a little further because we got Francis 7.
Correct.
How do you know it's 140 years?
Well, if they die at 30 years, assuming they have a year or two overlap with their next iteration, we're looking at some serious time.
All right.
And then because language evolves, would Logan 5 even be able to communicate with the old man realistically? We can just look at how the American accent is compared to the British accent, with us being in touch for the over 200 years, but just how different things are. So
I don't like you not suspending your disbelief.
Yeah.
Just an interesting thing that I thought when I was watching it today.
I'm completely with Sam on that.
Here's where I'm going to go with that.
You're getting too deep.
We'll play with this meta moment you're going with, and I'm going to say yes, he can, because while there were advancements, I think there was probably a bit of decline in education. I don't think there was advancements in anything else. I think it's like they kind of put, let's call it evolution, at stasis. By going in this route. This is a society.
Well, they're not going to have an education. They're going to have an indoctrination.
Yeah, exactly. Which it goes back to my point. Like, if you're fed that, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
Right, but here I'm just going specific with the way that language morphs. I mean,
so you're telling me, Mike, I just want to go with this. You're telling me that if we went back 150 years, we wouldn't be able to communicate with an American?
If you said something's cool to someone 150 years ago,
that's you're being specific. I'm just saying communication.
Okay.
In general.
Can you explain the meaning of the word yeet? Y-E-E-T.
Again, you're going this. I'm saying, hey, I need a glass
I'm going
of water.
macro.
Hold on. This is actually fascinating. I just watched a film called The Professor and the Madman with Mel Gibson and Sean Penn right before this call. And it's about how they created the Oxford Dictionary. And they went back, to 1400, to do this. I won't get into the specifics of the movie. But I think, to Mike's point, if they're in an encapsulated dome where people just live and die, language would not evolve the way, just like what Sam was saying. I don't think the language would evolve the way it does naturally in human society, because the way language evolves is from other cultures and from, like you said, Mike, an English person to an American person. That doesn't exist in this film. It's just all these people in this concentrated area. So there may be slight variations, but even going outside, assuming that the people on the inside were taught the same language, which obviously they were based on the fact that they could communicate, I don't think it would have changed.
Yeah.
That's fair. It was honestly just a question that I had. And then, fun thing.
Wait. Let me although, to your point, there are words apparently through the film that were not brought into the community. For example, beloved father, beloved mother. They didn't know what that meant.
Beloved husband, beloved wife. I wonder what it means.
So,
Well, I think that's part of the indoctrination. It's kind of like, well, you know, we can go we can go into the 1984 aspect of like getting rid of certain words and
right.
you know,
right.
banning certain words and like
2 + 2 is 5.
Also, I think that it depends. Like you said, they're locked in that bubble. So it would be like if you worked in a mechanic's garage, this would be your vocabulary. You would know everything about this, but I stick you in a classroom, then your vocabulary is completely messed up because you don't know those words, right? I think to a sense this is the way it is because they're only in that dome. So they only use words that would be with them. So yeah, if they went out, they wouldn't know, like you said, my beloved father or that. I get that. But what if they went out and like they didn't know what Ice Cube was, or they didn't know
they didn't know what a cat was.
Yeah, exactly. Perfect.
And if they had told the old man, hey, we're gonna go have a good time in arcade or we're gonna go to carousel, the old man would have no idea.
Yeah, exactly. So
grabbed a roll of quarters and went to go play asteroids. You don't know why. But the other thing is that even though they don't know those words, they could still read them.
Yeah, well, yeah, I can read Old English too. It doesn't mean I know what it means, like Mike said.
Sure, but would you have said "whiffy"? And who?
No, but my point is, it's still English, but it's not the English.
Sure. Yeah, but I mean, there's certain words that we still run across in English, but we don't know where the emphasis is on the syllable and stuff like that.
Exactly.
So, did anybody recognize the poems that the old man was quoting when he was talking about the cats?
No, I when I watched it again early this morning, I was like, does this guy just speak in rhyme the whole time? And he doesn't, but yeah, McCavity, yeah.
He's referencing T.S. Eliot. I don't remember the name of collections, but it's basically what Andrew Lloyd Webber
based cats on.
Based cats on, yeah.
Interesting. That's cool. No. I didn't know that.
Shameful.
Yeah.
They want it to exist. Anyways, that's my point. I made that note, and I don't know if that was in reference to something specific after we go out.
I take that as the runners.
Isn't that at the end when they're talking about the reference to the husband and wife?
It might be, but I don't remember.
You can't just like throw out a note without.
I'm hoping that you're going to remember. So
that's what I just said.
Yeah.
For me, you threw it out, so I'm taking it the way I would take it. I would take it as the runners.
I'm with you.
They want it. They what?
They want it to exist. They want it to get away from it. If you're throwing out a note and you have nothing to back it up on, I would take that as the runners. They wanted to exist. They wanted to get away from what they were in.
Well, what is it then?
The whole society, the dome, everything. Yeah, that's the way I would take it.
I thought that was a reference. I think that's at the end of the film, and that's a reference to being alive and having kids. I think that this is why you should like timestamp your damn notes, man, because I think that's at the end when she's talking to Logan after she finds out what father and mother means.
Right.
Yeah. And she's like, I would like to be beloved mother. And he kisses her and he's like, beloved father.
Yes.
Husband and wife.
Don't be a dick.
Tossing.
Go to Mike.
Okay. So my favorite scene in the film was probably as they made their way out of the ice cave and actually saw the world for the first time. And the reason being so is that scenically, I feel like the designers kept the inside muted, somewhat monochromatic. And so coming to the outside and having the actual natural earthen tones was a huge difference. not to the degree of Black and White and Color of Wizard of Oz, but evoking a similar type feeling. So that's what I really enjoyed looking at it from a scenic perspective, is as they went into the real world, things seemed to get brighter and more vibrant and less monochromatic.
I have two favorite scenes. I love the beginning with the bubbles and then into the diorama for the city. And I love when they light the city diorama on fire. Kind of reminds me of like Godzilla, you know. My other favorite scene is at the very end when Logan is being interrogated by the computer.
5. Did you find sanctuary? Did you find sanctuary? We will begin surrogation.
And it's, what do they say, segregate or something like that?
And I want to bring this up. It's surrogation.
Surrogation.
Not interrogation. Surrogation.
Yes, surrogation.
Why that word? Because
I don't know. I was going to look it up, but
I did, and it doesn't. It's still a substitute, a replacement, and I don't know why.
And so he had, like, 5 different, versions of himself around his head, and I love that the computer couldn't compute, and that destroyed the computer. I mean, it's very rudimentary, at this level of technology, but back in that day, that was really interesting, that, man versus machine sort of thing.
Yeah, I don't think that the word really goes with it. And I'm curious.
I'm not sure it does either. It's you think about the Matrix nowadays versus, how that worked. And I was proud of him, Sam. He grows up and he grows up and he grows up.
He did. I just looked it up right now. It keeps linking it to segregation.
Yeah.
Well,
that's interesting.
But it links it. That's why I was trying to look it up. Like you just, I tried to be a James and fact check you right now in real time. But
it's interesting because if you if I look up surrogation, it just goes to surrogate or surrogate.
So those were my favorite points of the film. What about you, James? We've gotten everybody else.
I mean, Carousel always just, it's one of those things that always caught me back, when I first saw it, and it's just haunting, like I said, and it's always kind of just, I don't know, it's always spooked me, even since I was little, and I think that still kind of sticks with me. But
why does it spook you?
There was, I don't know, maybe the fact that, I was probably watching it as a little kid when I probably shouldn't have been, and it's,
it's the hockey mask that fucked him up.
It's not even that. I think it's that fucking voice, It's just, it's haunting. There's nothing else going on. Everything stops. That voice just kind of like echoes through the chamber. Capricorn 1, it's coming, Then they start flying up. I think I laughed my ass off as a little kid when they started, floating up and started exploding.
Yeah, when the first person goes up, like the person next to him grabs him, and I don't know if that's to try to keep him down or if they were swinging a little too wild, and the actor made like a, hey, let's not get kicked in the face, but I definitely saw that moment.
And I would also have to say the old man, because I thought the old man was just hilarious. His lines and his delivery were just...
he was really good.
And it was always like, oh, where can I get one of those? He wants to be included so bad.
That's funny. So he's been alone, right?
Yeah.
Just him and his cat. He's like the old cat man instead of the old cat woman.
Well, it's interesting because the only people he ever remembers are his parents,
his father,
and that's it. Yeah. It's just like,
So,
We don't really
James,
know what happened. Go ahead.
was it? Did it add a layer to his character to find out that he was quoting T.S. Eliot?
One more time.
Did it add a layer to his character to find out that he was quoting old poetry with T.S. Eliot?
I'd say yes.
I'm sure it was. I think the question. I think it was probably lost.
It was lost. I didn't know until
I didn't
Mike
catch
said
that,
it.
yeah.
Thank you, Mike.
Sure.
I'm sure that I'd be interested to see what it says in the book in that regard. I'm sure that there's a little bit more of an explanation to it that gives some backstory to it or something. Well, I mean, obviously we get the gist that, I mean, the cats are his life,
Right.
you know. So,
Well, James, if you have another point, go ahead and make your point. But I was going to ask, why did you pick the film?
I'll go back to that in a sec. There was one thing I want to kind of piggyback because it was my last note on this, but it kind of goes in line with one of your favorite scenes when the whole city's on fire at the end.
Yeah.
Whole city's on fire. It's falling apart. Everybody's just walking outside like there's nothing going on. They're as calm as can be.
And then they find the old man and they're like,
nothing to see here.
Right. Well, to take one step up on that, my last note on it is that there's very few yellows in the crowd. Nobody has a baby or any kind of small youth. So it seems like that.
so all the babies are dying in the fire.
Right.
Holy shit. That's
right. Yeah.
Oh, that's
but, you know, if you think about it,
they're going to procreate.
They were in a situation where they weren't used to taking care of the youth.
Oh, yeah.
So it wouldn't necessarily click in their minds to say, oh, we should rescue the babies.
Even all the cubs were dying then too.
But
Right.
That's
also,
terrible.
keep in mind, they also had no attachment to him.
Correct.
You know? So it was just like being in a zoo. Tap, tap, tap on the window, you know? So,
Or pound,
Francis
pound,
7.
That
Logan
was
5.
a very good point, Mike.
yeah. To answer your question, I've wanted to revisit this film for a while. And this kind of just was a good reason to do it. Again, like I thought it was kind of going to be a stand-up. I thought it was going to, be a film that lasts. Now, I remember a while back, probably 5-6 years ago, that this was supposed to be something that has been supposed to be remade for I don't know how many years. And there's always been an obstacle that's come up. I don't see anything on IMDb about anything coming up in the future for pre-production or anything like that. I don't know who owns the rights. I don't know. But again, from what I understand, it's always had something go wrong and it's always been put on the back burner. Something's happened, but I'd be interested to see it as a remake.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah, I think it has a good premise and a good storyline. Though, to be honest with you, to put everything else beside of it, the idea of the whole movie is really kick-ass, dude. I really think so.
I think it's kind of irrelevant now as well. I think that now we're in this.
Oh, absolutely, especially nowadays.
Oh, yeah, I mean, we've got like the Hunger Games and stuff. Like, it's gone beyond.
The story is definitely sound, and seeing it done with the modern application of effects that we have the opportunity to use would certainly be a wonderful way to retell the story.
So, Mike, did you actually like it? I mean, you've talked quite a bit about it. Did you like it?
Yeah, I enjoyed it. I do enjoy science fiction and fantasy. Is probably my primary genre of at least literature that I consume. So, typically anything sci-fi or fantasy, if it's got a good premise, I would enjoy it, and I did enjoy this.
And this was your first time, Mike?
Correct.
And this was your second. Well, cool.
Yeah, I've seen it since I was probably 10 years old. I
was nervous when I was renting it because the picture that you sent, or the one that comes up on Google, is not the one on iTunes. That's why I got nervous about it. I'm like, shit, is this the right movie? But then when I started reading it and looking at the trailer, I'm like, yeah, it's okay. It's the right movie.
Oh, the trailer is just horrible. At least 3 minutes.
No, but I knew I was watching the right movie because the image that I looked at the first time and what it is on YouTube is not the same poster.
Yeah. So a couple things. Michael York, he was in Austin Powers, right? He played Basil.
Yes.
Okay. I knew the name. I recognized his face. So yeah, I don't know what happened to Michael York in that it seems like, after the 70s, we didn't really see him again until into the 90s with like the Austin Powers and things like that. So I'll have to take a gander at his.
Maybe he was doing theater, bro.
He was a theater actor.
I would assume because he acted theatrical.
Right.
Well,
right. That would certainly
my
not surprise me.
mother was telling me that the guy that played Francis was a classically trained Shakespearean actor.
That doesn't surprise me.
Helped, Michael York in this film, and she made a point that I hadn't considered, although I don't know if I go along with it, that Francis is kind of like a father to Logan. I'm not
Definitely older brother.
Yeah,
more that Francis 7, Logan 5. So
Yeah. So anyway,
I think that to a point. I could see that.
All right, fair enough.
James, you're looking at notes.
I'm looking up what he's done prior to.
This is your show, man. I mean, like it's your pick.
No, I'm curious. I want to answer Mike and what he did. Did he have a great big huge
gap
of work between Austin Powers and Logan's Run? It looks like a lot of voiceover stuff and just TV appearances. Really, nothing major that I can see. And I think that's probably the case. I think he lost kind of leading man status after a while.
That's what
sure.
She
said.
That's what she said.
What's that? I mean, of course he did Three Musketeers, but I don't know if that was before or after Logan's Run.
Sure.
And he did a couple other Musketeer movies after that.
So does anybody have any final points, or should I close it out and then we can talk about what's coming up next?
I like the film. I mean, I've seen the film many, many times. I give it 2 thumbs up. There's many sucky points, but I've watched that movie 10 or more times, and I used to own it. I lost it in many moves, but no, it's a good movie. I mean, it sucks. Don't get me wrong, but it's better than Speed Racer.
Oh, yeah, I would agree with that. I don't know if I could hype it up to the extent that I used to. Like if it ever came up in conversation, I wouldn't say, "Oh my God, that's a classic." How do you? Yeah, I don't know.
I do. I'm like, you haven't seen Logan's Run.
I've never even heard of it.
So
before
I do hype it in that way.
Well, if you hear Logan nowadays, everybody's going to think Hugh Jackman.
I know, but that's not what we're talking about.
No.
Right.
But I'm telling you, I've never heard of this movie. Even when he said Logan's Run, I was like, what the hell's that?
Yeah.
I've never, ever heard of this movie until James brought it up.
So yes or no, plus or minus?
For me?
Yeah.
Plus. I would watch it again. It's
nice.
You have to take it like, you have to put yourself in that mindset of 1976.
Exactly.
And take it for what it is. But like I agree with Mike and James, and obviously you too. It has a really strong premise, and I like the story. I get that. That's really cool. I mean, they did what they could in 1976. I'm not going to hate them for that.
Yeah.
But it's still, like I said, that and I know I've already said this a third time. That car is cool as fuck. It's all glass. It goes back and forth. Dude, that shit looks cool in 2020.
Dude, the dioramas. I mean, yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah, but I get it, bro. It's cool. I like the movie.
I'll definitely say the effects were dated, but with that said, I don't think they could have done better with what they had available at the time. And because of that, I can totally accept this as really a great movie, and a movie that I suspect a lot of filmmakers built upon. through the subsequent decades to get us where we are today. With that said, it's very interesting to see what a PG movie is in 1976 versus what a PG movie is today.
True.
Yep.
Got a lot.
You could see titties in PG back then, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
You could see other things back then too.
So thank you everyone for joining us for our conversation in regards to Logan's Run. As always, Brian, James, Sam, it's a pleasure discussing and digesting movies with you guys and finding all the things that we didn't see together.
Like guide wires.
Like guide wires. We hope you've enjoyed tonight's discussion. If you did, please consider liking, subscribing, leaving a comment. Regardless, thanks for joining us, and hopefully we'll see you on the next one. Take care.